Main character, obstacle character, subjective story. Okay, and finally, objective story. Those are our 4 through lines. Okay? Now, here's what we do with them. Each one is going to have signposts and journeys. It's going to have 4 signposts, 1, and 3 journeys in between them. And we could mark it like this. 4, do I have room? Good, good. I pulled back far enough. That's rare I do that. 6, 7. Okay, so this would be signpost 1, journey 1, signpost 2, journey 2, signpost 3, journey 3, and signpost 4. That's going to be duplicated on each one of these. And theoretically, for every one of these 4 through lines, there will be 4 signposts, 3 journeys, and in fact, S1, J1, S2, J2, S3, J3, and S4. I'm only going to do 2 of them as an illustration, main character and obstacle character. Now, theoretically, then we have a total of 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7. We end up with 28 different scenes. Now, most people will tell you there's a 24 scene structure in most movies. Movies run about 100 minutes long, and they have about 24 scenes in them of about 4.5 minutes apiece. Okay. Books generally will have about 24 chapters in the average length book. Some will have less, some will have more, because there are more than one way to combine these. You can combine several into a written scene. But we're going to call each one of these act-level things that happens, a signpost to journey, a signpost to journey. Let's for a moment call them dramatic movements or nickname them scenes. Now these are not like scenes in the movies. Scenes in the movies change every time you change location. Scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. Every time you change location, even if the dramatic movement is not complete, even if it's broken up into pieces and parceled in and out of other things that happen, it doesn't matter about dramatic movements. It's just when you change location, you change the scene. On stage, scenes are different in acts. They're more of a dramatic movement, but they might have several different things going on at once rather than just being only the main character or only obstacle character. That's in the storytelling. But in the story structure, we end up with 28 different act-level movements, 7 from each of 4 through lines, which creates 28 plot scenes. Now, if we were to put them all together, let me complete down this way to show you what happens act by act in the way an act feels in a story. We have signpost 1, journey 1. And down here, in the objective story, we also have signpost 1, journey 1. Now, what does this do? When you complete signpost 1 and journey 1, for the audience, when you've done that for all 4 through lines, you've completed 1 act. This is what feels to an audience. Whoops, hold on. I lost my pause. Just a moment. Get the video back to where it ought to be. Almost. Hold on. Stay with me. Bear with me. Stop. Okay, good. Now, an audience is going to see this as being act 1, and then this one as act 2, and then this one as act 3, and this one as the denouement or conclusion or author's proof. And here's how it works. Here we see a complete movement that finishes all of the considerations that have as a part of them signpost 1. Signpost 1 is not actually completed until you arrive at signpost 2. So if you have learning and signpost 2 is understanding, then you go from signpost 1 and your learning increases through journey 1 until you arrive at an understanding. The moment you arrive at the understanding, that's when Act 1 is finished as far as the feel of it for an audience. Now usually you'll end up having signpost 1 and journey 1, they all sort of end about the same time, because each of these may actually be made up of little moments or little scenes or divided up, but when they're all finished, you get the sense of an act break. The rule of thumb is that you have to finish all the signposts and journeys that are labeled number 1 before you go on to number 2, because otherwise you're jumping into another area of exploration before you finish the first area, and it confuses your audience. In terms of the actual plot, this is always the order that will occur in the story, in the internal logic of the story. But when you start doing your storytelling, you can mix things up a bit. For example, you might start open with something in your objective story in signpost 1, and then say, okay, that's going to be the very first scene that we look at, is whatever signpost 1 is in the objective story. And then after that, let's jump ahead to introduce our main character. Signpost 1 for the main character. And then journey 1 for the main character, because we want to stick with him a little bit to get to know him better. Now we've completed all the main character stuff for Act 1. So let's say we want to introduce at this point, the next thing we cover is the first signpost for the obstacle character. And then we want to introduce the relationship as to how he compares to the main character, what relationship exists between them. Then we decide that we're going to finish journey 1 over here for the obstacle character. So we've gone from obstacle character to subjective story to journey obstacle character. Then we go to journey subjective story, and then finish off with the journey of the obstacle of the objective story to finish the whole thing off. The order in which we go through these is completely up to us, except that for each through line, the signpost must occur before the journey, or there will be a feeling of breaking in the order in which the story is revealed. So you can jump around any way you want as long as the signposts occur before the journeys in each through line, and as long as all the number 1s get finished before any of the number 2s, and so on. When you're all done with all 3 of these, the last signpost tells you where you ended up for each of the 4 through lines. So if you've previously thought that every story was just a single line of events that took place, now you see that there are actually 4 lines that take place, 4 plot lines for every complete story. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit now that I've finished the diagram to make sure that those of you on the web viewing can see it as clearly as possible, even though the CD-ROM looked pretty good all the way through. These are actually happening simultaneously in the internal logic of the story. The mind looks at where we're starting from all points of view, 4 points of view, and examines them all. And then it jumps into a progression for each one simultaneously, because our mind's eye has 4 different eyes with which to look, 4 angles to look at any given thing. So we move through all 4 at once, all 4 at once, all 4 at once, and so on. But in a story that's linear, like a book or a movie, unless we had a split screen in a movie that had 4 different pictures at once, or in a book, 4 different columns that ran side by side, we wouldn't be able to see them in order, so we have to mix them up and match them according to the rules that I just mentioned. That's what gives us an interesting progression throughout the story. Now, in our previous class on theme, I described this a little bit and said how we could attach a thematic item to each one of these. And in terms of character, keep in mind that every character, if you're using archetypes, there's 8 archetypes. Let me erase this so I have a place to write. There's 8 archetypes. And if you're using archetypes, because this is also an archetypal way of putting scenes together, I'll talk about that in a minute. If you have 8 archetypes, then each one needs to be introduced, and each one needs to be dismissed. Okay? Each pair of archetypes has to have, and there's 4 pairs of archetypes, antagonist, protagonist, reason, emotion, and so on. Each pair of archetypes, they have to have, that's by the way 16, the introduction and dismissal of each one gives us 16 things. Then we also have to have, on the pairs, the inclusion of an introduction to the relationship or the conflict in the pair, an interaction, interact, where they have it out between them, and a conclusion when we see which one ultimately wins, protagonist or antagonist. So you have introduction of the conflict between the protagonist and antagonist, the interaction of the protagonist with the antagonist, and the conclusion as to which one triumphs over the other one. Now with 4 pairs, that gives us 3 different things that have to happen on each of the 4 pairs, which gives us 12 different character scenes that have to be used. So altogether you've got 12 character scenes here and 16 introduction and dismissal scenes for every character themselves. Gives you a total of 28 needed as well. So 28 character scenes, each one would appear in one of these plot scenes. And by the time you're finished, you will have had 1 plot event, 1 character event, and in our theme classes we described how you got 28 items there, 1 theme event in every single one of these, so character, plot, and theme in every single scene, and a chicken in every pot. Okay? That's how you create a completely well-balanced story.